Okay, welcome to the proof for 625. Again, I assume you've been using the audio files and the picture files. Those are your main guidance, and the reason why, again, is simple. It steps you through the process, slows your mind down, and gets you into the proofs bit by bit. Here's some supplemental video guidance for doing proofs, but remember, rely mainly on the audio and picture files, and then come to the occasional video files to help further enhance that process. It takes a lot of practice. Proofs are difficult. It's just practice, practice, practice. Okay, so here we go. Make sure you have your rule sheet out with you. Remember, you should have printed this out. If you haven't, make sure you have it on the side. I recommend, again, printing it out and reading it as you go along. So this proof is valid. And the first thing you do is you always start at the bottom, in this case, not parentheses A or B. That's a neither nor form. And then it doesn't matter what the form is. You always start at the bottom. It's usually the conclusion, and you step through the process. The first thing you try always is or elim. Look at your sheet. The number one strategy is, can you use or elim? To use it, you never ever look at the line that you're at, in this case 3, or the conclusion. You only look above, wherever you have access to that, and you look for the main connective as or. The only sentence you have above is 1. The main connective there is and. That's not an or. So or elim as a strategy is out. That means you're on to the second strategy, which is the backwards method. Backwards method, look at that. Step 1 says you look at the line that you're at, in this case 3, and then you identify the main connective. What's the main connective? It's the not. How do you know? It's outside of all the parentheses. It's what's left over. And then you guess intro. So I go to rule. I click on intro. I click not. Anytime you guess a rule, you then have to look it up in the library. So look up not intro. You notice here it gives you that form in Fitch, but you should look it up in the sheet just to get familiar with this for your own sake. So I go up, I add a subproof, new subproof, add a couple of steps after, just to extend it down. I go back down to 5. In this case now it's 5, the conclusion. And if you look at the rule sheet, the last thing that's highlighted or boxed is the whole subproof. So I click up there. In this case it's 2 to 4, but it'll change over time. I choose verify, and I didn't get the check. So what I'm missing is obviously more than that, right? So look back at the sheet. This is a good mistake. I did that on purpose. I have a subproof that's one of the things I need. So if you look at not intro, there's actually 3 things required. The first is you need a subproof. The second thing is you go to the top and you put in the opposite of what's at the bottom. In this case, wherever your not intro is at. Not the bottom, but wherever your not intro is at. So what's the opposite of not parentheses A or B? The opposite of that is capital A or capital B. It's just basically whatever it is at the bottom, you take away the not, and that's it. And then at the bottom of the subproof, the last thing that's needed is the symbol for contradiction. Then you go back down and you do the highlight. And the only thing boxed or highlighted is the subproof. Now if I verify it, I'll get the green check. Yeah? Anytime you get the check, you're good to go, but you cannot go further unless you get that check. Okay, so I got the check. I now move up to 4. And anytime you move up, you reset. You start all over again. So you flip back to that first page in the rule sheet. And the first thing you do is you try that strategy again. What's the first thing you try? If you look at it, your number one strategy is or elim. Can you use it? Initially, if you remember from the beginning, you couldn't because the only thing you had was 1. But the rule for access is anything that's above and to the left. So at 4, what I have access to above is 3, 2, fall to the left, 1. So I have 2 and 1. Do I have an or as the main connective? Yes, it turns out in number 2 right there's an or. Now you can use or elim because that or just popped up. That's why you have to repeat these strategies. Because sometimes things pop up that allow you to try that strategy where it wasn't possible before. So I go to elim, or anytime I have a rule, you always flip to the library, you look it up, and then you fill in what it requires. So flip to that, and if you look at it, or elim has 2 subproofs. And I'm going through this kind of quickly because for the video you can stop at any time and then basically check it out, do it on your own, and then go back and pick up the speed, as it were. Yeah. Okay, so there's my 2 subproofs. All right, going back now, go back to your rule sheet. So the first thing you need is the two subproofs. The second thing you need is what goes at the top of each subproof, and it says each of the sides of the or above. Remember, these are your cases. A is true or B is true. So each of the subproofs corresponds to exploring those options. That's what or is. It gives you options. So first option, starting at 3, is suppose A were true. The other subproof is the other option, suppose B is true. And at the bottom of each of the subproofs is the common thing you're aiming for, the common denominator, the S. That's located not at the bottom of the bottom, right here, number 10, but actually wherever your rule is at. That's always the bottom relative to the rules. So where's your S? It's located wherever the or elim is at. That S here, in this case, is the contradiction. Yeah? I'm going to paste that at 8 and at 5. I then go back down to 9. How do I get this to highlight or check out? I have to highlight, if you look at the rule sheet, 3 things. The first thing is the or, where it all comes from. That gives you your options. That's the or from which you do or elim. The second 2 things you need to highlight are each of the cases, each of the options. That 3 to 5, and then the 6 to 8. Check it. You're good to go. And now all that's left in solving this are each of your subproofs. It doesn't matter which you do first. 3 to 5, 6 to 8. You got to do both. So I'm just going to go up to 8. Anytime you move up, you're back to the first page of the rule sheet. This procedure, by the way, holds for pretty much all proofs. So it's good to get this pattern down. Even though it's repetitive and confusing, once you start to get it down, it becomes more mechanical. After the mechanics comes the art of doing proofs, but that's later in the course. All right, so here we go. I first try number 1 strategy, which is or elim. Again, the question is, can I apply that? In order to apply it, you have to ask, what do you have access to? The rule for access is above and to the left. So at 8, I have access to 7, 6, fall to the left. I'm on this line now. 2, and then 1, fall to the left again. The only or there is 2. You cannot use that or again because it's already being used down here in 9, that or elim. So this or is already in place setting up this whole thing. You cannot use it again. Once it's being used, that's it. It's out. So no or elim available. There's no new or from which to do another or elim. So now you're on to number 2 strategy, which is backwards method. Backwards method says look at the line you're at, in this case 8, identify the main connective. Remember, the contradiction now is a kind of connectives, and then you guess intro. So I go to rule, intro, and then I choose contradiction. And if you look up the rule for contradiction intro, it says you look for the not sentence above and you guess its opposite. Okay, so look, what do I have above? I have 7, 6, fall to the left, 2 and 1. 2 is already in use. 6 is not going to help me out. The only thing I can really use here is 1, and that, strictly speaking, is not a not sentence. It's an and sentence. But from that, you notice I highlighted it, from that I can actually get a not sentence out of that. This is where you're working sort of top down in the backwards method. We've kind of skipped a step here to get the contradiction intro, but this is where your mind is stretching outwards when you start to do proofs. This is where you start to connect up the meaning and what you've learned to do proofs. That's why proofs is so hard, because it relies on so much of what we did previously. So not A and not B. If you think of the truth table, when is and true? It's only true when both sides are true. That means each of the sides has to be true. That means I can get not capital B from that. And the rule for that is, if you look it up, and elim. And elim says you can break off either side of the and, because they're all true pieces, right? So you can break off either side that you choose. In this case, I want the not B to get that. And the reason why I do that is now, for contradiction intro, I have my not P and my P. In this case, B and not B. The something and its opposite that makes for a contradiction. Verify it, and that first subproof is done. If you follow that, you should now try the other subproof on your own. It's the same pattern of reasoning as in 6 through 8, but with slightly different materials. See if you can use the rule sheet to fill this in for yourselves. I have the guidance and answer files in Laulima if you need extra help, but this video file is there to just give you further assistance. Alright, good luck folks. Keep at it. Keep up the hard work. That's the key to logic.